This isn't a channel that asks you to blindly believe. It's a channel that asks you to think. We'll explore spirituality, religion, the occult, psychology, mythology, symbolism, consciousness, and everything in between. We'll question traditions, challenge contradictions, and examine ideas that are often considered too controversial, too mystical, or too taboo to talk about. My goal isn't to tell you what to believe. My goal is to help you ask better questions. Whether you spent years on a spiritual journey or you're just beginning to wonder, is there more beneath the surface? This is a place for curiosity over certainty, discussion over dogma, and understanding over fear. If you're ready to explore the uncomfortable, the mysterious, and the misunderstood, well, welcome to the conversation, honey. I call myself Transcendental Anomaly because I don't fit neatly inside any one system of belief. Disclaimer, this channel is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a licensed professional in any field, including mental health, medicine, or theology. Everything shared here reflects personal perspective, interpretations, and open discussion, not professional advice or absolute truth. I encourage viewers to think critically, do their own research, and take what resonates while leaving what does not. Today we're going somewhere a little darker. We're talking about something that gets romanticized a lot in spiritual communities, the dark night of the soul. You probably heard the phrase before. People throw it around when they're going through heartbreak, depression, losing friends, questioning religion, feeling disconnected, or simply having a terrible year. But what actually is the dark night of the soul? Where did this concept come from? What does it actually feel like? And perhaps most importantly, how do you come out of it? Because if we're going to talk about spiritual awakening, we also have to talk about what happens when awakening doesn't feel beautiful. Sometimes spiritual transformation doesn't feel like becoming enlightened. Sometimes it feels like you're losing yourself. So what is the dark night of the soul? The phrase originates from the writings of St. John of the Cross, a 16th century Christian mystic and Carmelite. And this is important because the original concept is much more specific than the way social media often uses it today. For John of the Cross, the dark night described a profound stage of spiritual purification in which a person's usual sources of comfort, certainty, and spiritual consolation seem to disappear. It's not simply I'm sad. It's not simply I'm having a bad week, and it's not necessarily my life is falling apart. The traditional mystical concept involves something much deeper. The things that once gave you certainty about God, yourself, your purpose, or your spiritual life no longer seem to work the way they used to. And that can be terrifying. Modern spiritual communities have expanded the phrase beyond its original Christian context. Today, someone might describe a dark night of the soul as a period when their identity, beliefs, relationships, purpose, and understanding of reality are being radically reconsidered. Those experiences can overlap with psychological distress, grief, depression, anxiety, or trauma, but they aren't automatically the same thing, and that's an important distinction. Not every painful experience is a spiritual transformation. Sometimes suffering is simply suffering. Sometimes we need spiritual reflection. Sometimes we need therapy. Sometimes we need medical or practical support. And sometimes we need several of those things at once. So what does it actually feel like? Let's talk about the part people don't romanticize enough. A dark night can feel like disorientation. You may start questioning things you once accepted without thinking. Your beliefs may suddenly feel inadequate. You may ask, do I actually believe this, or was I taught to believe it? You may question your purpose, your relationships, your identity, your understanding of God, your understanding of spirituality, and your understanding of self. Suddenly, things that once felt certain become questions. You may feel like you've lost your connection. One of the strangest experiences can be feeling spiritually disconnected. You may pray and feel nothing. Meditate and feel nothing. Practice your rituals and feel nothing. read spiritual texts, and feel nothing. The practices that once gave you comfort may suddenly feel empty. And if you believe spirituality is supposed to make you feel peaceful all the time, you might start thinking, what happened to me? Did I lose my connection? Did I do something wrong? Am I spiritually blocked? Did I lose God? Did I lose myself? But what if the absence of that feeling isn't necessarily the absence of growth? What if you're being forced to develop a relationship with spirituality that isn't dependent on constantly feeling spiritually stimulated? The identity crisis that you go through. This is where things can become extremely uncomfortable. You may realize parts of your identity were built around things you no longer believe. Maybe you were the religious one, the spiritual one, the healer, the strong one, the person who always had answers, the person everyone came to for advice, the person who believed everything happened for a reason, and suddenly you don't know anymore. You may think, who am I if I don't believe what I used to believe? That question can be terrifying because sometimes we aren't just losing beliefs. We're losing the identity that came with those beliefs. Another part people don't talk about enough is isolation. You may begin to feel like nobody around you understands what's happening internally. You might not want to participate in the same conversations anymore. You might feel disconnected from friends. Family members may not understand your questioning. And sometimes you may feel alienated from the spiritual community itself. You're changing internally, but everyone around you still knows the old version of you. And that can create an incredibly strange experience. You're surrounded by people, but you feel completely alone. The grief, a spiritual transformation can involve grief. And sometimes you're grieving things that are still technically alive. You might grieve an old version of yourself, a childhood belief system, a relationship, a friendship, a religious community, a dream you once had, the person you thought you would become, the certainty you used to have. Sometimes growth requires admitting, I don't think I can go back to who I was, and that can hurt. The anger you feel. Not every spiritual journey is peaceful, unfortunately. You may become angry as hell. Angry at God, angry at religion, angry at your family, angry at people who taught you things you later questioned, angry at yourself for not questioning them sooner, and maybe even angry at spirituality itself. You might think, if this is supposed to be spiritual growth, why does it hurt so damn much? And that's an honest question. You don't have to pretend you're peaceful when you're not. And then there comes the loss of certainty. One of the hardest parts of spiritual growth may actually be learning to live without certainty. Before the dark night, you might have had all the answers. Now you have questions. And questions can feel like failure when you've been taught that certainty equals faith. But perhaps there is another possibility. Maybe not knowing isn't always a spiritual failure. Maybe uncertainty can create space for deeper understanding. You can say, I don't know, I might be wrong, I need to learn more, I changed my mind. Those aren't necessarily signs of weakness. Sometimes they're signs that you're becoming more honest. Then comes the part where you face your shadow. A dark night can also force you to confront parts of yourself that you'd rather avoid. Your jealousy, your resentment, your insecurities, your need for validation, your control issues, your fear of abandonment, your ego, your unhealthy patterns, the parts of yourself you don't post online, the parts you don't want other people to know exist. And this is where spirituality can become uncomfortable because it's easy to talk about love and light, It's much harder to ask, what parts of myself have I been refusing to look at? But here's where we need discernment. I want to be very clear about something. We should be careful about romanticizing suffering. Not every breakdown is a spiritual awakening. Not every depressive episode is a dark night of the soul. Not every traumatic experience is something you were meant to endure. And telling someone you're suffering because you're spiritually evolving can sometimes prevent them from getting the help they actually need. If you're experiencing persistent hopelessness, severe anxiety, inabilities to function, major changes in your sleep or appetite, or thoughts of harming yourself, don't automatically label that a spiritual awakening and try to endure it alone. Spirituality and mental health support don't have to compete. You can explore the spiritual meaning of your experience while also taking care of your psychological and physical well-being. So, how do you come out of it? Here's something I don't want to do. I don't want to tell you there's a magical 7-step formula that will instantly end your dark night, because transformation doesn't work like that. But there are things that can help you move through periods of profound uncertainty. So let's get into it. First, stop forcing yourself to have all the answers. You don't have to solve your entire existence in one night. Give yourself permission to say, I don't know yet. Sometimes the pressure of figuring everything out creates more suffering. Let your old identity die without destroying yourself. You don't have to immediately replace every old belief with a new one. You can exist in the middle. You can say, I no longer believe that, without immediately needing to say, here's exactly what I believe instead. There is a space between certainty and uncertainty. It's called exploration. Get grounded. Eat, sleep, move your body, go outside. Spend time with people you trust. Take care of your responsibilities. Sometimes spirituality can become so abstract that we forget we're still human beings living physical lives. Grounding isn't the opposite of spirituality. It can be part of spiritual maturity. Journal. Write down what you're actually experiencing, not what you think you're supposed to experience. Ask yourself, what am I grieving? What am I afraid of losing? What beliefs am I questioning? What do I actually know? What am I assuming? What parts of myself am I discovering? What am I trying to force myself to believe? Writing can help separate your thoughts from the overwhelming feeling of having everything tangled together. Don't isolate yourself completely. Solitude can be valuable. Isolation can become dangerous. Find people you can be honest with, and they don't necessarily have to share your worldview. Sometimes the most grounding person in your life is someone who simply lets you say, I don't know what the hell is happening to me right now, without judging you. Question your interpretation. This is especially important for transcendental anomaly. Don't only ask, why is this happening to me spiritually? Also ask, could there be a psychological explanation? Could there be a practical one? Could multiple things be happening at once? Practice nuance. Am I interpreting this through fear? Am I looking for signs because I desperately want an answer? Is this belief helping me understand my experience or making me more afraid? That's discernment. Allow yourself to change. You might not come out of your dark night believing exactly what you believed before, and that's okay. Maybe you become more religious. Maybe you become more spiritual. Maybe you become more eclectic, like me. Maybe you return to a tradition you previously rejected. Maybe you leave one altogether. Maybe you discover that you don't have to choose a label. The goal isn't necessarily to become the person you were before. The goal is to become more honest about who you are now. So what comes after the darkness? Maybe the most beautiful part is integration. You begin taking what you've learned and bringing it back into ordinary life. You become less interested in appearing spiritually evolved and more interested in actually being a human being. You may become more compassionate, more discerning, less reactive, less dependent on external validation, more comfortable with uncertainty, more willing to admit when you're wrong. You may realize, I don't need to understand everything to continue growing, and perhaps the spiritual journey isn't about escaping the human experience. Perhaps it's about learning how to inhabit it more consciously. So I want to leave you with this question. Have you ever experienced a period where everything you believe suddenly became uncertain? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Always receive every message with discernment. Question it, explore it, research it, sit with it. Thank you for spending time with me today. If this conversation challenged your perspective and gave you something to think about, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who's ready to question the narrative. New episodes every Saturday, where we'll continue the conversations most people are afraid to have. Until next time, stay anomalous and never stop seeking understanding.